Good evening, all the nerds out there. I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? Today we're gonna have a session on Rasa and Dhvani, which is actually Indian classical criticism. So I hope you all are ready for that. It's not gonna be a long session, it's gonna be short and very important session. So are you ready? Let's start with first slide here. As you can see over your screen, we have now let's talk about the introduction of Indian classical criticism. Then we'll move to Dhvani and Rasa theory. So let's start, right? So first, this fascinating world of Indian philosophy and literary criticism during the Sutra period, which spanned over 1,000 years, from the early Christian century to the 17th century. So this period was characterized by the rise of various schools of literary criticism and interpretation. First, we need to understand that the language that played a central role in this era, and it was Sanskrit. And it was the language in which the Vedas, the foundation text of the Indian Hindu tradition, were all written. This made Sanskrit a kind of go to language for religion, for philosophy, literary, and critical literature. However, keep in mind that it was primarily the Brahmins, that no kind of priestly class, and the educated upper class who were well versed in Sanskrit. But for the common people in South who predominantly spoke Tamil or Telugu, this presented a kind of challenge. So, to meet the needs of this local population, local version of religious literature began to emerge. And it wasn't until around the 7th century that literary religious hymns emerged in Tamil. An interesting side to note is that R.K. Narayan's version of Ramayana, which you might be familiar with, is based on the Tamil version by the poet Kamban from the 11th century. Now let's talk about literary criticism in the early days. So Indian criticism initially focused on what was called a ritual interpretation, especially of the Vedas, and this involved analyzing philosophical and grammatical aspects like the use of similes and applying the grammatical kind of categories outlined by Panini grammars. And this critical approach was often referred to as science or sastra, and it was rule governed and focused on figure of speech in poetry. The term alankara means ornament, and much like Western rhetorical theory, this critical science provided rules for figurative speech such as similes, metaphor, hyperbole, and of course, stanzaic forms. So, interestingly, the concept of criticism as a science had its roots in the belief that, you know, Vyakaran or grammar formed the foundation of all education and science. So Panini, who lived around the 2nd century BC, believed that a child should study grammar for 12 years before diving into any other subject. So grammar was seen as the gateway to other discipline such as political science, musicology, and dramatology. And as poetry existed before criticism, it played a generative role in the development of literary criticism. And critics believed that any combination of words with a special quality generated what they called kavya or poetry. Right? And poetry was viewed as having two essential qualities: alankara, which is kind of formal qualities, and guna, which is kind of essence. And that was all about the introduction, guys. Let's quickly move to our first and a special focus on Rasa by Bharatamuni. So as you can see over your screen, we have some points that we're going to discuss about. Right now, let's talk about it. First of all, rasa means juice, essence, or taste in Sanskrit. It is a fundamental idea in the world of Indian art and aesthetics. Think of rasa as the special ingredient that gives any form of art kind of, it can be a visual, academic, or musical, and it has a unique flavor. It's like the secret sauce that makes a dish extraordinary, right? But it's not something that you can easily describe. So instead, it's what stir up emotions and sensations in you when you experience a work of art. Now, here's the interesting part, guys. Rasa isn't something that the artist or creator no explicitly tells you. It's more like a hidden message, and it takes a sensitive spectator or shahada to truly grasp it. So, a shahada or saharday is someone who has a heart, right, and can connect with the emotions in the art, bringing it to life without overthinking it, right. So in the world of rasa theory, the main goal of entertainment, especially in drama or performance, is to evoke rasa or artistic joy, right. But that's not the end game, it's just the beginning. These rasas are brought to life by who? Bhavas, right, and which are a kind of various emotional states that the characters or element in the artwork experience. Now, where does all this come from? You must be wondering, right? Well, there's a remarkable ancient text called the Natya Sastra, which is actually attributed to Bharatamuni from the first millennium BC. This text lays the foundation for Rasa theory, and it's where you can find all the important details regarding it, right? But if you want to dive even deeper into this concept, check out the work of the Kashmiri Saiviti philosopher Abhinav Gupta from around 1000 C. He's like the Rasa theory guru, showing how this aesthetic convention has stood the test of time. So, according to Natya Sastra, the true purpose of art isn't just to entertain but to transport the audience into a parallel reality filled with wonder and bliss. It's about making you feel the essence of your consciousness and making you ponder your own spiritual and moral values. So, in other words, it's a profound experience that goes beyond just surface level of entertainment. And for Bharat Muni, if you can say, drama is the ultimate form of the aesthetic experience because it brings together all the arts into one beautiful synthesis. So, to sum it up, rasa is like the secret ingredient that kind of makes art special. And it's something that touches your heart and stir up your emotions. It's all about going beyond just mere entertainment and into a world of kind of wonder and self reflection. And it's a concept that has been part for our Indians artistic tradition for centuries, right? So that was all about rasa, guys. Now let me define rasa along with features, right? So rasa, as we have discussed, is kind of explained in Abhinav Gupta Abhinav Bharati. Remember the text? It is a comprehensive commentary on the Natya Sastra, which is basically like the Bible of Indian theatre and performance. So Abhinav Gupta was quite the genius at his time, and he even called the Natya Shastra the Natya Veda because of its importance in the world of performing arts. Now let's understand what rasa is all about, right? In Abhinav Gupta's view, success in artistic performance isn't just about getting good reviews or winning awards. It goes much deeper than that. It's all about skilled precision, sincere faith, and pure concentration. It's about the artist's ability to get the audience emotionally involved and immersed in the pure joy of the performance. So let me tell you what this rasa theory all about. Well, rasa can be thought of as the juice, right? Or the essence or kind of taste of a performance. It's kind of, that undeniable feeling of detachment and intense realization that you experience when watching a great play or performance. And I must say, everyone, sometime in their life, they must have gone through this kind of rasa, right? So, in a way, it's like the flavor of the performance, it's the heart and soul of the art. But again, here's another cool part. Rasa isn't just any emotion, guys. It's not like feeling happy, sad, or angry. In fact, it's quite the opposite of how Aristotle talked about emotion. Rasa is something deeper, something more profound. It's the essence of poetry and art that's beyond simple emotions. So the word rasa originally referred to a juice, right? Or even it is called elixir sometime. So think of it, like this magical elixir of artistic delight that anyone, regardless of their class or background, they can enjoy. That's a universal pleasure that transcends all barriers. Right, so rasa isn't something you can share over a cup of tea or, in your everyday chit chat. It's not a typical emotion that you discuss with friends also. So, rasa is something you experience uniquely in the world of art. It's that feeling you get when a performance moves you, when it touches your soul, and you're left with what? A sense of pure aesthetic delight. So guys, that was all about the features of rasa theory. Now let me tell you elements of rasa in Indian aesthetics, right? So first off, we have this Sringar rasa, as you can see over your screen. We have like 9 rasa here, and we'll talk about them one by one, right? So this Sringar rasa is all about the feeling of erotic love, romantic attraction, and beauty. Imagine those heart fluttering moments when you love, right? That's called Sringar Rasa. So now when we move to Hasya Rasa, which is all about humor and comedy, and this rasa is associated with the color, white, remember that, and the deity Premata. And it's like the triumph of your funny bone and your ability to make others laugh. Next, we have Rudra Rasa, which is completely opposite to Hasya, right? It deals with emotions like anger, jealousy, and even threat. When someone's got red eyes or knitted brows, and a lot of determination, you probably, kind of experience that Rudra Rasa territory, right? Next, we have Karuna Rasa. It's all about sorrow or grief, and it's a bit of bittersweet one because it can touch the human heart deeply. It involves feelings of disgust, unease, and anxiety. Then there is called Bibhatsana, and which is all about disgust and aversion. Like Shiva is the kind of presiding deity here, and the color associated with this Bibhatsana rasa is blue. Now we have another one, Bhayanak, right? And this rasa of horror and terror. And Yama is the presiding deity, and the color is black. It's like a roller coaster ride of fear and excitement. Then we have Viram, which is quite important rasa, which brings us to the heroic side of things. And it's all about valor and heroism. And Indra is the presiding, deity. And of course, imagine, like feeling like a mighty hero, like a modern day superhero. That is kind of, you can put it in Veer Rasa. Anyway, now we have Adbhut, right? Adbhut. And it's all about wonder and amazement. It's where you see something so incredible that leaves you in like, oh, it's awesome, or in sublime, it leaves you, right? And Brahma is the presiding, deity here, and the color is yellow. Now the last one that was added a bit later was Santa Rasa or Santam Rasa. And this rasa is all about peace and tranquility. It's like a serene, calm feeling. And here Vishnu is the deity and the color is perpetual white. So remember all these colors associated with, and of course gods, right? So remember, these rasas are like the different emotional ingredients, and that artists and performers use to create a unique experience, and they add kind of depth and richness to the art, making it like more relatable and enjoyable for all of us, you and me and the others, right? And so the next time when you watch a movie or any Netflix series, or kind of see some natak performance or anything, see, if you can identify these rasas and these emotions, you can relate with it, and it's like uncovering the secret spices in your favorite dish, and it makes the experience all kind of more delightful. So guys, that was all about the elements of rasa. Now next we'll quickly move to another important aspects of rasa, is kind of types of rasa. And here we have anubhav, we have bhavas, we have vyabhichari bhavas and vibhavas. So these all have different types, and we won't go deep into it, but I'll tell you what are important in these terms, right? So let me tell you, Indian aesthetics are kind of characterized into different types, right? Imagine it as the emotional heart of the art you see on this stage. So first off, we have three main types of bhavas, remember, okay, that help us to understand the development and enactment of emotions during artistic experiences. As I told you, three main types of bhavas, right? Sthai, Sanchari, and Sattvic. And Sthai bhavas are like the core emotions, and they are kind of 8 of them, and each corresponding to a different rasa or emotion. Like we have Rati bhavas, right? Which means love. Then we have Hasya, which is mirth, right? And Sok, which is sorrow, and Krodh represent anger. Then we have Utsah, which is energy, and Bhaya, which is terror. And we have Europa, which is kind of disgust. Then we have Vismaya. Vismaya is the other word of Adbhut, right? Astonishment. So now let's talk about Sanchari Bhavs. So Sanchari Bhav are also kind of, supporting cast of emotion that come and go in relation to the core emotion. So in this category, we have kind of whopping 33 different bhavas that we cannot sum it up here. You just remember the name. Anyway, moving on the Sattvic bhavas, these are the physical expression of emotions felt in the mind. They help kind of convey the feelings in a some tangible way. Now let's explore vibhavas, and there are kind of like the triggers that brings out those sthai bhavas we talked about earlier, right? And there are two aspects of vibhavas. Alambana Vibhav, which is kind of, this is kind of the person in whom the core emotion resides, like the characters who's deeply in love or making love the, kind of the central emotion. Then we have Uddipana Vibhavas. These are like the external stimuli that influence emotions such as moonlight, spring, or gentle breeze, or the scent of flowers. They set kind of mood and help evoke emotions. And I'm moving on to anubhavas. These are the effects actually that an emotion has on the characters. So when the actors experience emotions, it's through their words and gesture that the audience gets to feel those emotions too, right? And it's like the ripple effect of emotions. Lastly, we have Vyabhichari Bhava. So these are those fleeting temporary emotional states that come and go. And again, it has 33 of these as well, and they include things like weakness, depression, anxiety, and despair. They're like the small waves or bubbles that pop up and then merge back into the main emotions, like the detour in the emotional journey, right? And think of it like a river of emotions, right? And the sthai bhavas are the main current, and the sanchari bhavas are like little whirlpools that comes and go, right? And the sattvic bhavas are like the way the river looks and sounds, and vibhavas are what started the river flowing in the first place, and anubhavas are what the river looks like to the onlookers, and Vyabhichari bhavas are those small ripple and whirl that occasionally disturb the river's flow. So, guys, that was all about types of bhavas, vibhavas, and of course, anubhavas or vyabhichari bhava, all these things, right? Now, let's quickly move to our another important theory, which is Dhvani theory by Anandavardhana. As you can see over your screen, the dates are mentioned 820 to 990 CE. Now, let me tell you that this fascinating world of dhvani, which is a concept introduced by the brilliant thinker Anandavardhana, especially back in the 9th century. Dhvani often translated as sound or resonance, and it's like a the secret sauce for poetry. It's the magic that gives poetry its soul, its essence, its juice, its rasa. So picture this: when a poet pens down their thoughts, right, and they're actually creating a kind of emotional energy field through their words. This emotional vibe is what we call dhvani. It's not just about the words on the paper, it's about the emotions they stir up in the reader or listener or audience, right? And again, to truly get the essence of poetry, you need to be on the same emotional wavelength as the poets, right? It's like tuning in to some kind of radio station. But anyway, this means both the poet and the reader have to be sensitive to those emotional vibes. So if you ever find yourself getting lost in a poem or a feeling deep kind of connection with it, that's the power of dhvani at work, guys. Now, the dhvani theory is a semantic theory. In other words, it's all about the meaning and emotions behind the words. Poetry is, after all, a structure made up of words, right? And without those words, there is no poetry, correct? And those words, when it's kind of strung together just right, they will have something kind of some incredible ability to evoke emotions and spark understanding in the reader. Anandavardhan was the one who popularized this Dhvani theory, and his buddy Abhinav Gupta added some kind of interesting bits to it. And together they took the concept of Dhvani to a new heights. And in the world of poetry and literature, Dhvani is a very big deal, guys. It's like the secret ingredient that makes a poem come to life and gives us those kind of, wow, aha kind of moments when we truly connect with the text. For a successful poem, you need three things, remember. Pratibha. And can you guess what is pratibha? This is the poet's creative inspiration, is the spark that ignites the poem's creation. And the second is the body of kavya. This refers to the structure of the poem, the way words and meanings come together to form something beautiful. And the third is the rasa that we already talked. This is actually the magic part, right? The aesthetic effect that the poem has on you as a reader. And it's that emotional response and connection, you feel when you read a poem that really speaks to you. And when it comes to dhwani, there are some fancy grammatical definition like you must have heard, right? Dhwani, iti dhwani, something like that, which means both word and meanings are dhwani. What's important is that dhwani is all about the emotional resonance created by the words in a poem. Right, now let's talk about the construction of dhwani. As you can see over your screen, we have a couple of points also that we're gonna talk about. Right, so the construction of dhwani is like a magical key that unlocks the deeper meanings of the words and brings poetry to life. So, to get the ball rolling, guys, remember that words are the building blocks of any language, right? Whether we are talking about, or the written word or a spoken language. In Sanskrit, there are three kinds of words to pay attention, right? And these are abhidha, which means kind of, literal meaning. This is the plain and simple meaning of word. It's what you find in the dictionary, like the straightforward definition. Next, we have lakshana, which is kind of characteristical meaning. Here we kind of start to look at the word in a more subtle way. It's not just about what's written on the surface, it's about the characteristics and nuances of the word. Then we have Vyanjana, and most of you must have heard about, right? Vyanjana means simply a poetic and metaphysical meaning. So this is actually where the magic happens. Vyanjana takes us beyond the surface and into the world of poetry, and it's like the hidden treasure within words, the extraordinary, deeper meaning that goes beyond the literal. Now, when we talk about Vyanjana, which is also known as Dhwani, remember, is the superstar of our show. And it's the one that reaches deep into your soul and conveys the extraordinary meaning we just talked about. And this is where words transcend their basic definition and become poetic and profound. And think of Dhwani as the essence of poetry also. Now, why is Dhwani so important, right? You must be wondering. Well, we have already talked about it's used for a few key things also, like conventional meaning, which kind of helps us to understand words beyond their usual everyday meaning. Then we have the sound structure of the words. It's all about how words sound and the musicality they bring to a piece of writing. Then the power of the words to suggest meaning. Dhwani can make words suggest something deeper and more powerful. It's like a secret language between the poet and the reader. Then we have another purpose which is called suggestible, right? When poets use dhwani, they are not just telling a straightforward story. They're creating a world of expression using different poetic devices to make their words come alive. Even the ancient Rigveda recognized this concept of dhwani also, and they talked about the difference between the literal meaning and the inner significance, saying things like he sees but sees not, one hears but hears not, right? And it's like they were onto something big even way back then. And here's the best part, guys. The dhwani theory of meaning and symbolism takes poetry to a whole new level. It elevates suggestion and hidden meanings to the highest form of poetic expression. It's like turning poetry into some kind of beautiful puzzle that when you solve, you get the pleasure. Anyway, Anandavardhana, as we know, is a famous thinker, right? Contributed a lot to this dhwani theory. It's like his gift to the world of poetry. With dhwani, he gave poets the power to create worlds with their words, using all sorts of cool poetic tricks. So remember, dhwani is more than just a fancy word. It's the key to unlocking the hidden magic in language and making poetry something truly special. It's like a secret code that poets use to speak to our hearts and minds. And you know what? Abhinav Gupta, another smart guy, right, totally supports Anandavardhana's theory. this Dhwani theory because he knows how awesome it is, right? And now you should also support because you know how Dhwani is kind of important. But anyway, that was all about Dhwani and the construction of Dhwani. Now let's quickly move. What I think that's the end, and I'm just gonna talk about some influences on the later part and what happens in literary theory, especially in Indian classical theory. Now let me tell you. Now, when we started our journey, right, to Indian literary criticism, which kind of began with the concept of auchitya. Auchitya is kind of term that gains substantial attention from later critics. And what's intriguing is that it's first introduced in Anandavardhana's work Dhvanyaloka. And Anandavardhan believed that Auchitya, referred to as the soul of poetry, is a result of Rasa Dhvani. So here it's a kind of combination of both. And this connection between the two is quite significant in the context of Indian literary criticism. In Indian criticism, the emphasis on readers is remarkable. The public was expected to have some kind of theoretical knowledge, often imparted by Brahmin priest, making the reader a crucial element in the evaluation of literature. The Rasika, or the proper critic, played also a vital role. They were expected to be well read, wise, and of course deeply immersed in kind of intricacy of theoretical requirement. They were also required to possess a refined sense of aesthetic enjoyment. We have a Rasa Dhyani, right, which serves as the foundational concept in Indian critical theory. So earlier critics kind of paved the way for it, and later critics expanded upon it, and making it a kind of very important milestone of Indian literary analysis. We see the influence of later critics such as Mamta, Vishwanath, and Jagannath Pandit, who continue to develop and elaborate on the exciting critical tenet, including Lakshana or Alankara, and also Rati. And the South Indian Tamil, we have one critic, right? Kuppu Swami Sastri in 1990 kind of gave a series of lectures on literary criticism in Sanskrit, and drawing comparison between traditional sastras and the kind of criticism of Western figures like John Dryden, Samuel Johnson, and S.T. Coleridge. The ancient critical principle have endured and continue to influence contemporary Indian writers and of course critics. And these timeless concepts are observed almost kind of unconsciously. And the historical shift in Indian literary practice have been influenced by external forces such as Muslim and British rule, impacting both content and style. So by the beginning of 20th century, there was a surge in Indian literature, especially in English, which raised questions about how to judge it, using European standards. So as we know, K.R. Srinivas Iyengar made an attempt to apply European standards, but later faced a dilemma in assessing Indian writing in English, as it often deviated, from those standards. And the newer Indian literature, whether in kind of vernacular language or English, is characterized by a strong sense of Indianness that we already know. So that's why this critical theory kind of paved the way for later critics or philosopher. And a school of thought named Dhvanyaloka emerged in response to new theoretical and Marxist approach to Indian literature. And this marked a shift toward embracing indigenous elements. So the case of Salman Rushdie, who has a unique blend of influences, right, prompt questions about what constitutes an Indian writer's identity and how it's shaped by various traditions. As Indian literature becomes increasingly multicultural, there's a growing need for a new Indian literary theory. And that's why these days in net you're getting questions from Dhwani, Rasa, Anandavardhan, right, from all these important poets. So that in that way, this particular Rasa and Dhwani becomes very important. So as we know, there's a growing need for new Indian literary theory that fits the evolving context and the changing literary landscape with vernacular and English literatures, shaped Indian literary theory to be more inclusive and relevant. And as I told you, today we have kind of, scratched all the surface of Indian classical literary criticism and its evolution from the ancient concepts like Dhwani, Rasa, and also how they face kind of challenges faced by contemporary writers and critics. And guys, that was all about what our Indian classical criticism. And maybe tomorrow I'm gonna come with European classical criticism, where we're gonna talk about Plato and Aristotle. So that's all, guys. Thank you so much and have a good day. Remember to subscribe the channel and hit that bell icon. So bye bye and have a good day.